Good morning and welcome to Morning Movie News, where Marvel has wrestled the headlines away from DC once again, with the casting rumor that it's down to Paul Rudd and Joseph Gordon-Levitt to play Edgar Wright's Ant-Man. This news has gotten a number of you excited, or at least piqued your interest, and you've asked me for my thoughts on it. And they are mixed, actually. From a creative standpoint, I feel both guys are a great choice. We know Joseph Gordon-Levitt can do both comedy and action, and I would love to see Paul Rudd move into action. I really do like Paul Rudd's work. I think he's very talented. I think he does every man very well. I think he has a good, sharp wit, and I think I could really see him meshing well with Edgar Wright's sensibilities. Same with Joseph Gordon-Levitt, though. So I can totally see why they would be on the radar for this. I can see why Edgar Wright would be excited to work with both of them, and it would be a step up for Edgar Wright, because with all due respect to Simon Pegg and Nick Frost and even Michael Cera, who he's worked with previously, those actors have enjoyed, success with Edgar Wright, but not really on a large scale, at least within Hollywood. So this would kind of move Edgar Wright out of his own little cult circle of filmmaking and more into mainstream movie making, or at least into the business of Hollywood. More part of the group, the main group. So creatively, very excited. If I had to pick between the two, I would actually go with Paul Rudd. I don't like all superheroes being 20-somethings, and I just would be excited for Paul Rudd to try something fresh. Although, as an Asterix, I feel that he might be a little bit too much like Chris Pratt in Guardians of the Galaxy. Both of them have kind of a similar delivery, a little bit of a sarcastic tone to their humor, and you don't want them to be repetitive. So that's my only concern from a creative standpoint. But from a business standpoint, I am extremely concerned, and I think both of them, as much as I would like to see them play the role, I think, as a producer, I would have to say no to both of them. And that's because, time and time again, both actors have proven to be box office poison. Paul Rudd just, again and again fails. He makes these little indie films that no one even bothers to go and search out. And even his mainstream work, This Is 40, was a huge flop. And he was also in that recent film, I forget the name of it, from James L. Brooks, with Owen Wilson and Reese Witherspoon. No one even bothered to see that in theaters at all, really. It was an embarrassment to everyone involved. So he has horrible problems. And then look at Joseph Gordon-Levitt. He might have a strong fan base, but they're not translating into ticket sales. Don John really did not do well at all at the box office, and it's so unfortunate because while I said you should really see the movie at home, I don't think, I wouldn't have expected it to do, for my own personal review, but I wouldn't have expected it to do as poorly as it has. I think from the buzz that it seemed to have, and the marketing push they gave it, and JGL's supposed fandom, it would do better than, I think, around the 20, I think maybe even a little under 20, but it's around there. That's all it's grossed in just 2 weeks, and it just continues to slide. It's not even holding steady. So the numbers just simply aren't there to support either choice. And I think that, Edgar Wright really, should try and get a bigger star, because Edgar Wright doesn't have good box office numbers either. So, at the end of the day, creative stuff, and of course there's always a nice surprise, but creativity, while it plays into the product, as for the performance of the product, it usually is a numbers game. It usually is a mathematical equation. For instance, like the movies Hannah and Drive represent a certain type of movie that always opens at 11 million. Without doubt, without fail. You can change the creative teams, you can change, the exact story, but that kind of artistic indie action film, there's only $11 million worth of people who want to see it opening weekend. And that just doesn't change. And so clearly there just aren't a lot of people in the movie-going audience that are interested in Paul Rudd and Joseph Gordon-Levitt. And I think that if you stick them in a Marvel movie, I don't know how much that's going to help, because they've just been rejected on such a large scale for so long. I mean, these aren't two actors waiting for their big break who are up-and-comers. They're established. Audiences have had the chance to discover them and potentially have at some point, either on video or at a theater, and said no. So that's my thoughts on this. I feel that if they cast either one of them, I think that Edgar Wright's fan base will be very happy, and those actors' small fan groups will be happy. But I think overall, the movie just won't click, and Ant-Man will just have another problem. Besides losing Ultron, coming after Avengers 2, and just basically being so late to the party that, as I've questioned on Between the Pages, Comics to Film, the Ultron episode, I've questioned whether or not you even need an Ant-Man movie anymore, because he's just so out of the loop and so far from what was created. All right, so that's the first story of the day. The second story is, they've been releasing some pictures or leaking them online of the new Asterix animated movie. And of course, Asterix is a very popular European comic book strip. It does very well in Europe. I used to read them when I was little, when my mom wanted to try and have me learn French, so she would buy me these comics, and they were very pretty, and I enjoyed them. I read them like those and Lucky Luke. I thought they were fun. But they've made live-action Asterix movies abroad, and they've done quite well. But I don't even believe they were even released here. I know Roberto Benigni starred in one. I think that was the Caesar one. But, Asterix is just such a huge property overseas that just has not registered here at all. Kind of like Formula One racing. But the reason I bring it up is not only because, to introduce the American viewers here to Asterix, if you're not already familiar with them, I think they're like Viking, like a little Viking village, and they have some crazy hijinks. Think Tintin Viking style. Almost. But I'm wondering if an animated movie will have more crossover appeal because they're easier to dub and animation does so well here in the United States. And I'm wondering if this will even get a U.S. release. So I'm kind of curious if anyone thinks here they would want to check it out. Does anyone plan to see this Asterix animated movie? Why is Asterix so popular overseas? What is the American audience missing out on? So I just kind of wanted to bring that into the conversation. The third story of the day is that you might have caught they released the movie poster for the Grand Budapest Hotel, which is the upcoming Wes Anderson film. And it's just, it's typical Wes Anderson. It's very charming, almost looks half illustrated, half like a model. They took a photo of this big, beautiful hotel that's very Victorian and obviously in Budapest. And it looks really interesting. But the reason I brought it up is that they had the list of people that were going to be in the film, his usual huge cast of eclectic actors. And Tilda Swinton's coming back, Edward Norton's coming back, which I thought was wonderful from Moonrise Kingdom. I thought that was great. But the person I was excited to see join was Jude Law. Now, I have become just a huge Jude Law fan recently. I mean, I recommended him to play Newt Scamander in my casting for that video, and I just have a lot of faith in him. I would love to see him make a comeback like Matthew McConaughey. As I said, two guys known for their looks when they started out as pretty boys, and as they've gotten older, they're trying to become more serious, legitimate actors. Maybe they always have, and they just couldn't do it, but now that they're trying to do that and move and redefine themselves, and I really admire that. And also, if you didn't see Side Effects, I thought Jude Law was really good in that movie. He did a fantastic job playing the role and really made that film for me. I mean, it's kind of billed as a Rooney Mara, Channing Tatum film, but it really is Jude Law's movie, and he really impressed me a lot. So I hope that this continues Jude Law's reimagining and that he might continue to get more work and, maybe reach a point like Matthew McConaughey, where McConaughey had to go around in these indie films, build buzz with the fan base, and then look what happened. Matthew McConaughey got picked up for Interstellar by Christopher Nolan. I mean, that's huge for him. So I would love to see Jude Law get that kind of recognition from another director. Although, on a side note, Christopher Nolan works very hard to cast older actors in his films because he feels that, older actors all the time are overlooked, and everyone makes a big deal about actresses over 40 not being able to get work, and Nolan, feels that it's a problem for actors over 40 as well. So he really goes out of his way to try and give them work such as Tom Berenger, Rutger Hauer, Matthew Modine, stuff like that. And so I don't think Matthew McConaughey would want to be included in that group, but I think that might also be something that I think Nolan's rooting for him as well. And so Nolan, I urge you to look into Jude Law. All right, so those are the three stories of the day. The question is from Mario Pacheco Swivel Chair, a very interesting handle here on YouTube. And Mario asks, Grace, are you surprised Gravity has done so well despite everything you feel is wrong with it? No, not at all. And I think that's because there are a number of factors coming into play that are very smart on the behalf. I don't know if they were intentional or if Alfonso Cuarón built the film this way, but let me go into it. So if those of you who haven't seen my review, I felt that Gravity had amazing special effects, amazing visuals, but I just felt that the story was very cliche. Across the board cliche. I did have a problem with the way Sandra Bullock was depicted as a female professional. That was only a part of the review, although that seems to be what most people decided to, latch on to and attack, even though I did say the whole film was cliche, and I had equal problems with George Clooney's character. And a little bit of a spoiler, for those of you who've seen the articles, the physics of the film are totally wrong. None of this actually could have happened. It's not feasible. From everything from the distances between the different points that they go to in the film, they're untraversable in real life in space. And also, they said, something that happens to George Clooney's character would not actually have happened because there's no pull in space. Once someone is able to stop you, they can easily pull you in another direction. You can't fall in space once you've stopped. There's no gravity. So I have a lot of problems with stuff like that. I really feel films need to be realistic. For instance, I'm hearing a lot of chatter about how Captain Phillips might not be true, and that the real Captain Phillips might have made a lot of it up and actually been responsible for endangering his crew's life. So that really downgrades that film for me as well, even though I did enjoy it when I was watching it. So anyway, back to Gravity. So even though I have huge problems with it, story-wise, and then also the fact that it's not realistic, it turns out, I can still see why it's doing well. I think that there are a couple of factors that just make it irresistible to moviegoers. There's the overwhelming critical approval. And I have heard some people say they didn't like the film, both online and comments that I've seen from you guys, and just talking to people in everyday life. They've admitted that they found it a little boring, or they agreed that it was cliche. But the problem is everybody has to see it for themselves. It's kind of come a situation where it has such amazing reviews, and it has made some great box office headlines that everybody wants to judge the movie for themselves, which is great, and I think totally legitimate and wonderful. So that's what's going on, and it really underlines how few people regularly go to the movies. So if a movie could just get people who usually don't go to try their film just once, it's a huge box office boost. And also, I would keep in mind, the numbers are very good on Gravity, but they're not like summer blockbuster numbers or Avatar numbers, but just considering how poor the rest of the box office are, they're very impressive. The other thing is that I think that Gravity has tapped into this emerging movie audience that I'm not a part of, because I think that there are films, like you'll notice a pattern. Man of Steel, Pacific Rim, Gravity, these are all films that a certain a demographic is really enjoying, and you know what? That's wonderful. But I think that that demographic is very vocal and tends to think that it's the only demographic out there, and that's kind of where some of the spin is coming in. And they're very I think that people who don't like the film don't want to engage in an argument with people, just like nobody wanted to fight over Man of Steel. Nobody wanted to fight over the fact they didn't particularly love The Dark Knight Rises, a large group of people, because there's that small contingent that likes these movies that's just so vicious in their defense of the films, instead of just having a conversation, a nice open conversation about why did I like it, why didn't you like it. The people don't want to engage with them. So you're having like a large group of people, like an undercurrent, that are like, you know what, didn't love it. Saw it, tried it because this group was so loud and said they liked it, but it wasn't my cup of tea. And they don't register because they don't want to engage in the fight online. So I think that's what's happening. And I do know that group of people who likes Pacific Rim, who likes Man of Steel, very loyal to Nolan despite the quality of the film maybe at the end, also have a tendency to go multiple times. So that's very important. So I just think it's interesting. I think there's always different groups of moviegoers. For instance, there are certain people who love documentaries. There are people who just love, comedies. There's a whole group of people who love Melissa McCarthy movies. But this one group is like almost like a little bit like a movie gang, and you know who you are, and you just can't have a normal conversation sometimes about these films. And I felt that hurt Nolan a little bit. I thought there was some backlash. People were just so sick of hearing all that vitriol around The Dark Knight Rises. So that's what I think. I think Gravity has just become a film that everybody needs to see once, just to see what everyone's talking about. And so few people actually do go to the movies on a regular basis that when you can just pique people's interest outside of that, then you have a huge success. And we'll see. I do believe Gravity will be a big Oscar contender because the momentum is just too strong. And I do feel people will want to it'll help contribute to ratings. So that's my thoughts today on Morning Movie News. Thank you for tuning in. If you have any questions, you can write them down below. And if you have anything you want to see discussed tomorrow, share that as well. Thanks for watching. Bye.